The cockroach crawling across my forehead is what finally wakes me up. Not the mariachi band practicing outside my window at 6 in the morning, not the smell of something that died under my bed 3 weeks ago, and definitely not the gentle Mexican breeze carrying the sweet aroma of raw sewage through my broken air conditioner. No, it's the cockroach that does it. I brush the little bastard away and immediately regret opening my eyes. The ceiling of the Hotel Paraiso, and I use the term hotel loosely, looks like it's been used for target practice by someone with a paintball tool and questionable aim. Water stains spread across the plaster like abstract art, if abstract art could make you nauseous. My name is Paul Mitchell, I'm 38 years old, and I fix cars for a living back in Haven Mills, New York. 3 days ago, I was supposed to be enjoying a romantic getaway with my wife, Rachel, in Cancun. Instead, I'm lying in what can only be described as a Mexican horror movie set, wondering how the heck my life went so spectacularly wrong. The answer, like most disasters in my life, starts with my wife's brilliant sense of humor. "It'll be hilarious, Paul," she'd said, giggling like a schoolgirl as we stood in the airport security line. "Trust me, you'll laugh about this later." I should have known something was up when she kept checking her phone and smirking. Rachel's a corporate attorney. She doesn't giggle. She delivers devastating cross-examinations and crushes opposing counsel's souls for breakfast. Giggling is not in her repertoire. But I was distracted, thinking about margaritas and beach love, so I missed all the warning signs. The way she insisted on separate boarding passes. How she suddenly needed to use the bathroom right before our flight. The fact that she hugged me goodbye like she was heading off to war instead of just stepping away to powder her nose. 20 minutes later, I'm sitting at gate B12 watching our plane taxi away from the terminal, without me, because apparently my loving wife of 16 years thought it would be absolutely hilarious to give me the wrong boarding pass, sneak onto an earlier flight, and leave me stranded in LAX with nothing but a note that read, "Enjoy the adventure, babe, XOXO. The adventure, as it turns out, involves spending my entire vacation budget on a last-minute flight to the closest Mexican resort I could afford, which happened to be this charming establishment that makes a Motel 6 look like the Four Seasons. I reach for my phone, hoping against hope that maybe Rachel has come to her senses and sent me an apology text. Instead, I find 17 new Instagram notifications. Every single one is Rachel, posting selfies from what looks like a 5-star resort in Cabo, complete with captions like, "When your husband is too slow for the gate, prank wife, vacation vibes, sorry not sorry." The comments are even better. Her friends are eating this up like it's the funniest thing they've ever seen. "OMG, Rachel, you're terrible. Paul must be dying right now. Relationship goals. My husband would homicide me." Yeah, well, your husband might be onto something, ladies. I scroll through more posts, each one a fresh kick to my already bruised ego. Rachel's having the time of her life, sipping champagne and getting massages, while I'm here playing hide and seek with tropical insects and questioning my life choices. The worst part? She's not wrong about one thing. This is exactly the kind of stunt that old Paul would have laughed off. The Paul from 5 years ago would have found a way to make this into a funny story we'd tell at parties. Remember when Rachel pranked me so hard I ended up in Mexican Roach Motel? Classic Rachel. But that Paul died somewhere between the 3rd mortgage refinance and the 15th time Rachel forgot our anniversary because she was too busy climbing the corporate ladder. This Paul, the current model, is running dangerously low on patience and completely out of cares to give. I'm contemplating the philosophical implications of my situation when someone starts pounding on my door like they're trying to break it down. Paul, you miserable son of a witch, open this door." I recognize that voice immediately, and for the first time in 3 days, I actually smile. Susan Martinez is standing outside my door, and she sounds pissed enough to commit homicide. Susan's been my best friend since high school, back when she was Susan Kelly, and I was still naive enough to think life would work out the way I planned. Now she's a private investigator with an ex-cop's attitude and a mouth that could make a sailor blush. She's also, apparently, the only person in my life who gives a care about what happens to me. I stumble to the door and open it to find Susan looking like she just stepped out of an action movie. Her dark hair is pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. She's wearing cargo pants and a tank top that shows off arms that could probably bench press my car. And she's got the kind of expression that suggests someone's about to have a very bad day. Jesus Christ, Paul, you look like heck, she says, pushing past me into the room. She takes one look around and wrinkles her nose. And this place smells like something, multiple somethings. Susan, what the heck are you doing here? Saving your sorry self, apparently. She drops a duffel bag on the floor and turns to face me. I saw Rachel's little social media circus and figured you might need some help. Good thing, too, because from the looks of this place, you're about 3 hours away from starring in your own episode of Dateline. I sink down onto the bed, which creaks ominously under my weight. She really did it, Susan. She actually left me here. Yeah, I know. I also know she's been posting about it like it's the greatest achievement of her career. Susan's expression darkens. But here's what you don't know. While you've been down here playing Robinson Crusoe, your wife's been playing house with Chad Morrison. The name hits me like a punch to the gut. Chad Morrison. 41 years old, owns 3 car dealerships and a construction company, drives a Mercedes that costs more than I make in 2 years, and has the kind of artificially white smile that makes you want to punch him on principle. What do you mean, playing house? Susan pulls out her phone and shows me a series of photos. Rachel and Chad at dinner. Rachel and Chad at some charity event. Rachel and Chad looking very cozy at the Rusty Anchor, which happens to be my regular bar where everyone knows I've been going for the past 10 years. These were taken 2 days ago, Susan says quietly. While she was posting those cute little prank photos, she was also making sure the whole town knew she was available. I stare at the photos, feeling something cold and hard settling in my chest. How long has this been going on? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Susan sits down next to me, and for a moment her tough-as-nails facade cracks just enough for me to see the concern underneath. Paul, I think this whole Mexico thing wasn't a prank. I think it was an excuse. The pieces start falling into place with sickening clarity. The separate boarding passes. The wrong gate information. The way she insisted on handling all the travel arrangements herself. Rachel didn't leave me in Mexico as a joke. She left me here so she could start her new life without having to deal with the messy business of actually ending her old one. That manipulative witch, I whisper. Yeah, well, that manipulative witch is about to get a very unpleasant surprise, Susan says, standing up. Because we're going home, and we're going to make sure she knows exactly what kind of mistake she just made. The flight back to New York gives me plenty of time to think, which turns out to be a mistake. By the time we land at Albany, I've worked myself into a state of cold, calculating rage that Susan seems to find both impressive and slightly terrifying. Just remember, she says as we wait for my luggage, we need to be smart about this. No going off half-cocked, no dramatic confrontations until we know exactly what we're dealing with. I'm not going to do anything stupid, I tell her, and I mean it. The old Paul might have stormed into the house, demanding explanations and making threats. This Paul, the one who spent 3 days eating questionable tacos and sharing a bathroom with creatures that belong in a nature documentary. This Paul is going to be much more methodical. The drive from Albany to Haven Mills takes about an hour, and with every mile, I can feel my hometown's particular brand of small-town claustrophobia settling back over me like a familiar blanket. Haven Mills is the kind of place where everybody knows everybody else's business, where secrets last about as long as snow in July, and where a scandal can follow you to your grave. It's also the kind of place where a man's reputation matters, where being made a fool of in public is almost worse than being broke, and where the story of Rachel's little prank has undoubtedly spread through the community like wildfire. We drive past the old textile mill that's been closed for 15 years, past the row of bars and pawn shops that make up our pathetic excuse for a downtown, and finally into the residential area where Rachel and I have lived for the past 8 years. Our house is a 2-story colonial that we bought back when we thought we were going to fill it with kids and laughter. Instead, we filled it with arguments and long silences, but it's still home. Or it was, anyway. Susan pulls into the driveway behind Rachel's BMW, and I notice immediately that the car's cleaner than it's been in months. Fresh wash, fresh wax, even the tires have been detailed. Rachel's getting ready to make an impression on someone. Her car's here, Susan observes unnecessarily. Yeah, I noticed. I take a deep breath and steel myself for whatever's waiting inside. Let's get this over with. The front door is unlocked, which is unusual. Rachel's been paranoid about security ever since someone broke into the Hendersons' place last year. I push it open and step inside, immediately noticing that something's different. The house is too clean. Not regular clean, Rachel's always been neat, but deep clean. professional clean. The kind of clean that happens when someone's trying to erase evidence or make a fresh start. "Rachel," I call out, "I'm home." No answer, but I can hear movement upstairs. Susan and I exchange glances, and she nods toward the living room while pointing upstairs. We've done this dance before, back when we were teenagers sneaking around trying to catch her older brother with his girlfriend. I head upstairs while Susan positions herself where she can see both the front and back doors. The bedroom door is closed, but I can hear voices inside. Rachel's voice and a man's voice I recognize all too well. Chad Morrison is in my bedroom, in my house, probably in my bed, and he's having what sounds like a very personal conversation with my wife. "Told you, he's not coming back until Sunday," Rachel is saying. "We have the whole weekend." "I still think this is crazy," Chad replies. "What if someone sees my car? Who's going to see it? Paul doesn't have any friends except that psycho ex-cop, and she's probably off somewhere blowing off steam at a firing range or whatever it is she does. That psycho ex-cop is currently downstairs, probably listening to every word of this conversation and planning various creative ways to commit homicide. I make a mental note to keep Susan away from any sharp objects for the next few hours. Besides, Rachel continues, after this weekend, it won't matter who sees what. I'm filing on Monday. Filing, as in divorce papers, as in my wife of 16 years is planning to end our marriage, and she's discussing it with her boyfriend in our bedroom, while I'm supposed to be stuck in Mexico, dealing with the aftermath of her hilarious prank. The rage I've been carefully controlling for the past 24 hours suddenly flares white hot, and it takes every ounce of self-discipline I possess not to kick down that door and start throwing punches. Instead, I pull out my phone and start recording. "What about Mia?" Chad asks, referring to our 16-year-old daughter. "Mia will be fine. She's smart enough to figure out which side her bread is buttered on. Paul's a mechanic, Chad. You own half the town. It's not exactly a difficult choice." And there it is, the final piece of the puzzle. This isn't about love or passion or even simple infidelity. This is about money and status and trading up to a better life. Rachel's not leaving me for Chad Morrison, the man. She's leaving me for Chad Morrison, the bank account. I stop recording and head back downstairs, where Susan is standing in the living room with her arms crossed and an expression that could melt steel. "Well," she whispers. "It's worse than we thought," I whisper back. "She's filing for divorce on Monday, and they're planning to spend the weekend here, in my house, in my bed." Susan's jaw tightens. That cold-hearted witch. Gets better. Apparently, Mia's going to choose Chad's money over her old man's love. We'll see about that. Susan pulls out her own phone. "I'm calling in some favors. By tomorrow morning, I'm going to know everything there is to know about Chad Morrison's business dealings, his personal life, and what he had for breakfast last Tuesday." "What do we do right now?" Susan grins, and it's not a nice expression. "Right now, we let them think they're getting away with it. Let them get comfortable. Let them make mistakes." She heads toward the front door. "Come on, let's go get you a drink, and maybe start spreading the word that Paul Mitchell is back in town." The Rusty Anchor is exactly the kind of bar you'd expect to find in a dying industrial town. Dark wood, darker beer, and the kind of clientele that considers a night without a fistfight to be a disappointing evening. It's been my second home for the better part of a decade, the place where I go to complain about work, watch sports, and pretend that my life is more interesting than it actually is. Tonight, it's also going to be the place where I start my comeback tour. Susan and I walk in around 8 o'clock, and the reaction is immediate. Conversations stop mid-sentence, heads turn, and I can practically hear the gears turning as everyone tries to figure out what Paul Mitchell is doing back from his Mexican vacation 3 days early. "Well, well," calls out Tommy Brennan from his usual spot at the end of the bar. "Look what the cat dragged in. How was paradise, Paul?" Tommy's been coming to the Anchor longer than anyone, and he's got the kind of mouth that makes him the unofficial town crier. Whatever I tell Tommy tonight will be all over Haven Mills by tomorrow afternoon. "Paradise was educational," I say, sliding onto a bar stool. "Really opened my eyes to a lot of things." The bartender, Mickey, sets down a beer without being asked. He's been pouring my drinks for 8 years, and he knows my brand. "Thought you were supposed to be gone until Sunday. Change of plans?" I take a long drink and look around the room. Turns out there's a lot more interesting stuff happening right here at home. Susan settles onto the stool next to me and orders a whiskey neat. She's scanning the room like she's looking for threats, which she probably is. Old habits die hard. Like what? Tommy asks, because Tommy can't help himself. Like finding out who your real friends are, I say, and who your real enemies are. It's a cryptic answer, but it gets the desired effect. The entire bar is now listening to our conversation, even the guys pretending to watch the baseball game on the TV above the bar. Speaking of friends, Susan says loudly enough for everyone to hear, I saw the most interesting thing on my way over here. Chad Morrison's Mercedes parked in the Maple Street area. Funny place for a guy like him to be hanging around on a Thursday night. Maple Street is where Rachel and I live. Everyone in the bar knows this, and I can see the wheels turning as they process the implications. Maybe he was looking at houses, Tommy suggests innocently. I heard the Morrison boy's been shopping around for something bigger. Maybe, Susan agrees, though from what I could see, he seemed pretty comfortable wherever he was. I'm starting to enjoy this. We're not saying anything directly, but we're planting seeds. By tomorrow, half the town will be speculating about what Chad Morrison was doing on Maple Street, and the other half will be wondering why Paul Mitchell came home early from his vacation. You know what I love about this town, I say, addressing the room in general? People here understand loyalty. They understand that when someone screws you over, there are consequences. You're absolutely right, agrees a voice from one of the pool tables. It's Jake Murphy, who works construction for one of Chad's companies. A man's got to stand up for himself. Exactly. I raise my beer in a mock toast. To standing up for yourself. The bar echoes with agreement, and I can see Susan trying not to smile. We're building an audience, creating a narrative, and setting the stage for whatever comes next. My phone buzzes with a text message. It's from Rachel. Where are you? Your flight doesn't get in until Sunday. I show the message to Susan, who grins and nods. I type back, home early. Wanted to surprise you. Having a drink with friends? See you later. 3 dots appear immediately, indicating she's typing a response. Then they disappear. Then they appear again. She's panicking, trying to figure out how to respond without giving anything away. Finally, great, can't wait to hear about your trip. Liar, Susan mutters, reading over my shoulder. My phone rings. It's Rachel, probably calling to try to figure out exactly where I am and how much I know. I decline the call and turn off the phone. Not taking her calls? Tommy asks. I'm having a drink with my friends, I say. She can wait. This gets nods of approval from around the bar. In the unspoken code of places like the Rusty Anchor, a man's time with his friends is sacred, and any woman who tries to interfere is automatically in the wrong. We spend the next hour holding court, with Susan and me carefully feeding information into the gossip mill. Nothing too direct, nothing that could be considered slander, but enough to get people talking and asking questions. By the time we leave, the entire bar knows that Paul Mitchell is back in town, that he's not happy about something, and that Chad Morrison might want to watch his step. Mission accomplished. Phase 1 complete, Susan says as we walk to her car. What's Phase 2? Phase 2 is where we start gathering evidence, real evidence, the kind that holds up in court and ruins people's lives. I like the sound of that. The old Paul might have felt guilty about plotting revenge against his wife. This Paul, the one who spent 3 days eating questionable street food while his wife was planning his divorce, this Paul is ready to burn some bridges. There's something else, Susan says as we drive back toward my house. I made some calls while you were working the room. Chad Morrison's not as squeaky clean as he pretends to be. What kind of not clean? The kind where he's been cutting corners on his construction contracts and paying off building inspectors to look the other way. The kind where his car dealerships have been selling vehicles with undisclosed accident damage. The kind where a good private investigator with the right connections might be able to cause him some serious problems. I feel a cold smile spreading across my face. How serious? The kind of serious that makes a man reconsider his life choices. The kind of serious that makes him realize that maybe sleeping with other men's wives isn't worth the risk. And Rachel? Susan's expression hardens. Rachel's a lawyer. She should have known better than to pick a fight with someone who has a PI for a best friend. We're pulling into my driveway now, and I can see that Chad's Mercedes is gone. The lights are on in the house, and I can see Rachel moving around in the kitchen, probably trying to erase any evidence of her afternoon activities. You ready for this? Susan asks. I think about the past 3 days, the roaches and the questionable food and the humiliation of being abandoned in a foreign country like unwanted luggage. I think about the Instagram posts and the mocking comments and the casual cruelty of turning my pain into entertainment. Most of all, I think about Rachel and Chad in my bedroom, planning my divorce and discussing my daughter like she's a commodity to be traded. Yeah, I say, I'm ready. Walking into my own house feels like stepping onto a stage. Rachel's in the kitchen and she's clearly been busy. The place smells like Febreze and guilt, with just a hint of expensive cologne that definitely doesn't belong to me. Paul, she calls out, her voice pitched just a little too high to be natural. You're home early. How was Mexico? She appears in the doorway wearing a sundress I've never seen before, and a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Her hair and makeup are perfect, which is suspicious since it's almost 10 o'clock on a Thursday night and she's supposedly been home alone. Mexico was enlightening, I say, setting my bag down by the door. Really gave me a lot to think about. I'm so sorry about the mix-up at the airport, she continues, moving closer. I felt terrible about it, but I figured you'd make the best of it. You always do. The mix-up. She's really going to stick with that story, as if accidentally giving me the wrong boarding pass, and then posting gleeful selfies about it on social media was just an innocent mistake. Oh, I made the best of it, all right, I agree. Met some interesting people, learned some interesting things, had some very educational conversations. Something flickers behind her eyes. Fear, maybe, or calculation. What kind of conversations? The kind that make a man reevaluate his priorities. I move past her into the living room, noting that the couch cushions have been rearranged and there's a wine glass in the sink that wasn't there when I left. Where's Mia? At Jessica's house. Sleepover. Rachel follows me, staying just a little too close, like she's trying to read my expression. Paul, are you okay? You seem different. 3 days alone in a foreign country will do that to a man. Gives you time to think about your life, your choices, your relationships. I turn to face her directly. Your marriage. She actually flinches. What do you mean? I mean, I had a lot of time to think about us, Rachel. About where we've been and where we're going. About what's really important. And what did you decide? It's a loaded question, and we both know it. She's trying to figure out how much I know, how much I've guessed, and how much trouble she's in. The smart thing would be to play dumb, to pretend I don't know anything and give her enough rope to hang herself with. But I'm not feeling particularly smart tonight. I'm feeling angry and betrayed and just vindictive enough to want to see her squirm. I decided that I've been taking too much for granted, I say finally. I've been assuming that the people closest to me have my best interests at heart. That they're loyal. That they respect me enough to be honest with me. Rachel's face goes pale. Paul, I also decided that I need to start paying more attention to what's happening in my own life, in my own house, in my own town. I step closer and she takes an involuntary step back. You'd be amazed what you can learn when you really start paying attention. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. I pull out my phone and show her the photos Susan took earlier. These were taken while I was in Mexico, while you were posting those hilarious prank photos. Funny how you managed to be in 2 places at once. The blood drains from her face completely now. She opens her mouth to say something, then closes it again. For the first time in 16 years of marriage, Rachel Mitchell, attorney, negotiator, professional arguer, is speechless. I can explain, she finally manages. I'm sure you can. You're very good with explanations, very creative. I put the phone away. But here's the thing, Rachel. I don't want to hear them. Not tonight. Then what do you want? It's a good question, and one I've been asking myself for the past 24 hours. What do I want? An apology, an explanation? A chance to save our marriage? The answer, I realize, is none of the above. I want you to understand something, I say quietly. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. That you can't just do whatever you want to people and expect them to smile and take it. Paul, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. Because the man who left for Mexico last week, the one who would have forgiven you, who would have tried to work things out, who would have put your happiness ahead of his own dignity, that man didn't come back. I head toward the stairs, then pause and look back at her. By the way, I stopped by the Rusty Anchor tonight, saw a lot of old friends, had some very interesting conversations. Amazing how news travels in a small town. The look of horror on her face is almost worth the past 3 days of heck. Almost. Sleep well, Rachel. Tomorrow's going to be a very interesting day. I leave her standing in the living room and head upstairs to what used to be our bedroom. I'm not sleeping in there tonight. Not after what I heard this afternoon, but I need to get some clothes and start making other arrangements. The room still smells like Chad's cologne, and there are 2 indentations in the pillow where 2 heads have been lying. They didn't even bother to change the sheets. I grab some clothes and toiletries and head back downstairs. Rachel's still standing exactly where I left her, looking like she's seen a ghost. "Where are you going?" she asks as I head for the door. "Susan's couch," I say without stopping. "Don't wait up." As I drive away, I can see her silhouetted in the doorway, and I know she's already reaching for her phone to call Chad. They're going to have a very interesting conversation tonight, trying to figure out how much I know and what I'm planning to do about it. The truth is, I'm not entirely sure myself. But I know one thing for certain. The old Paul Mitchell died somewhere between Mexico and the Rusty Anchor tonight. And the new Paul Mitchell is going to be a very different kind of problem. Susan's living room couch is more comfortable than my bed has been for the past 2 years, which probably says something profound about the state of my marriage. I wake up Friday morning to the smell of coffee and bacon, and for a moment I almost forget that my life has turned into a country music song. "Morning, sunshine," Susan calls from the kitchen. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in months." I stretch and check my phone. 17 missed calls from Rachel, 12 text messages, and 3 voicemails. Rachel's been busy. I'll bet. Chad too, probably. Nothing like a little panic to get people's attention. Susan appears with a cup of coffee and a plate of eggs that looks like it was prepared by someone who actually cares about my well-being. It's a novel experience. "What's the plan for today?" I ask. Today, we go on the offensive. Susan sits down across from me with her own coffee. "I spent half the night making phone calls and pulling in favors. Want to know what I found out about your wife's boyfriend? Hit me. Chad Morrison has been very, very naughty. 3 of his construction projects in the past 2 years have failed safety inspections that somehow got overlooked. His dealerships have been selling cars with undisclosed flood damage. And most interesting of all, he's been having some serious cash flow problems lately." I pause with the fork halfway to my mouth. "What kind of cash flow problems?" "The kind where he's been borrowing against future contracts to pay current bills. The kind where he's been cutting corners to maintain his profit margins. The kind where a man might be very interested in marrying a successful attorney with a steady income and no prenup." The pieces click into place with sickening clarity. This isn't a love affair. It's a business transaction. Chad needs Rachel's money and respectability, and Rachel wants Chad's social status and lifestyle. I'm just the inconvenient husband who needs to be disposed of. "There's more," Susan continues. "Guess who's been handling some of Chad's legal work lately? Please tell me you're not about to say what I think you're about to say. Rachel's been representing Morrison Construction in 2 separate lawsuits over the past 6 months, which means she's been sleeping with a client, which is a massive ethics violation that could get her disbarred." I set down my fork and lean back in my chair. "How long have you known about this?" "I suspected something was off when I saw them together, but I didn't have proof until this morning. I've got a friend in the county clerk's office who pulled the court records for me. So we've got adultery, ethics violations, and fraud. What else do we need?" Susan grins. "We need to make sure everyone knows about it, starting with the people who matter most." My phone rings. It's Rachel again, and this time I decide to answer. "Paul, thank God," she says before I can even say hello. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I thought I made myself pretty clear last night. "Please, can we meet somewhere? Can we try to work this out?" "Work what out, Rachel? Your affair? Your plan to divorce me? Or maybe you want to explain why you've been representing your boyfriend's construction company while you've been sleeping with him?" The silence on the other end of the line is deafening. "That's right," I continue. "I know about that too. Amazing what you can learn when you start asking the right questions." "Paul, I can explain. I'm sure you can. But here's the thing. I don't care anymore. You made your choice when you left me in Mexico. You made your choice when you brought him into our house, into our bed. And you made your choice when you decided to plan our divorce without bothering to tell me about it. How did you hear about that? Small town, Rachel. People talk. And right now they're talking about you." I hang up and turn off the phone. Susan's watching me with an expression of professional admiration. "Nicely done. How do you feel?" "Like I'm just getting started." I stand up and stretch. "What do you say we go pay a visit to Chad Morrison?" "I thought you'd never ask." Chad's main car dealership is on the outskirts of town, a sprawling complex of glass and chrome that screams success and prosperity. The parking lot is full of shiny vehicles with price tags that could feed a family for a year. And the showroom looks like something out of a luxury magazine. We find Chad in his office, a glass-walled space that overlooks the sales floor like a fishbowl. He's on the phone when we walk in, but he quickly ends the call when he sees me. "Paul," he says, standing up and extending his hand like we're old friends. "Good to see you. How was Mexico?" I ignore the offered handshake. "Educational. Very educational." Chad's smile falters slightly, but he recovers quickly. "That's great. Rachel mentioned you were having a wonderful time." "Did she? That's interesting, considering she was here with you while I was there." The color drains from his face, but he tries to maintain his composure. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything, Chad. I'm stating facts. You've been sleeping with my wife, you've been doing it in my house, and you've been planning my divorce while I was out of the country." Chad looks around nervously, probably realizing that our conversation is taking place in full view of his sales staff and customers. "Maybe we should discuss this privately." "Why? Afraid people might hear the truth?" I step closer and he backs up against his desk. "Afraid they might find out what kind of man you really are." "Paul, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is mine. I misunderstood what kind of woman I married, and I misunderstood what kind of man you are. But I'm a quick learner." Susan steps forward. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Susan Martinez, private investigator. I think you should know that we're aware of your business practices, your financial situation, and your relationship with Mrs. Mitchell. We're also aware that Mrs. Mitchell has been providing legal representation for your companies while engaging in a personal relationship with you." Chad's face goes white. That's not, we haven't what? Haven't been sleeping together? Haven't been planning to get married after Paul's divorce is final? Haven't been using attorney-client privilege to cover up your business problems? "I want you both to leave," Chad says, trying to sound authoritative. "Right now." "We're leaving," I agreed, "but this conversation isn't over, and not by a long shot." As we walk back through the showroom, I can see the sales staff whispering among themselves. By closing time, everyone in town will know that Paul Mitchell confronted Chad Morrison about his affair with Rachel. "Phase 3 complete," Susan says as we get back in her car. "What's Phase 4? Phase 4 is where we go nuclear."